and welcome to round 2 of the Parenting Roundabout podcast. I'm Terri Morrow, and I'm here with Catherine Halecko. Say hi, Catherine.
Hello, everyone.
Usually on this podcast, we talk about parenting issues, but once a week, Catherine and I like to get together to discuss TV, movies, books, and other entertainment topics because it's nice to talk about something other than parenting for a change. This week, we're talking about the excellent West Wing episode 17 People, and we're going to continue our challenge round with Catherine watching her very first episode of Lost, which I'm sure left her feeling kind of lost. But first, after many weeks of meaning to get around to it, we finally caught up with all of those episodes of Speechless, or most of them. I think I got all of them. You didn't quite, thanks to the abc.com website and app being unfriendly.
Yeah, and the cable on demand, like, serving up a miscellaneous assortment of episodes instead of just all of them.
That is not helpful. Come on, ABC.
It's not.
So did you just go and, like, watch all the stuff they have up on their Facebook or Twitter?
I watched some videos that way, yes. Some clips from the episodes that I missed. And I watched all the ones that were available on demand and some that were no longer available I had previously watched. Yeah. So who knows what the heck they're pulling over there. But it's such a good show.
Yeah, I was DVRing them for a while, and then, or rather my daughter was DVRing them for me. And then I think she must have thought that I had watched them because, of course, there was a huge pile of them, and why wouldn't I have watched them? And I had not. So then I had to scurry, like you said, on demand only has some, and on the computer, some of them are locked, and you have to have your password. But I did finally manage to get, I believe, all of them. I would also say to people who are having trouble keeping up with the show, follow it on Twitter or Facebook. They put up so many videos. Now that I watch the whole episodes, I realize the video doesn't really give everything away, but you can still follow the basic,
a taste.
basic idea. But yeah, I love this show. I really love it. It was
really
so
good
fun to watch. There wasn't a dud. I mean, some episodes I would say were better than others, but there wasn't a single one that I would say, oh, I don't want to watch this, or that was stupid, or I don't like what they did there. They're all just delightful. All the actors are doing a wonderful job. The scripts are really smart. There's a lot of good special needs parenting content that I personally appreciate, but I think it works really well as just a sitcom too. You know, they let the kids be in those roles. I mean, sometimes JJ's storyline is about his disability, but sometimes it's about him being a big brother, and sometimes it's about him, you know, liking chocolate or whatever, you know. Sometimes he's gets a little full of himself. It's just he's allowed to be a teenage boy in addition to whatever storylines. And, you know, there was a whole episode about inspiration porn and about not making people your hero just because they, you know, draw breath. So I think they're just really consistently nailing it with this thing, and I hope it's doing well enough in the ratings to stick around.
I think it got picked up. Didn't it get renewed for next year already?
I
think it did.
I did not see that piece of news, but I welcome it. That is great.
Yeah, that episode you mentioned with the inspiration porn, it was called HER Hero.
Yes.
And it was about an essay contest at school where Ray was going to write an essay about how his brother was his hero so that he could win some money and buy a hoverboard. And then Dylan schooled him on how that was not cool, and then he decided not to do it, and then some other kid that didn't even know JJ wrote about him being his hero. So but what I loved in that episode was Kenneth explaining the concept of the magical Negro that you get in the movies, and then playing that part for the rest of the episode, just narrating it in this folksy old voice. It was just really funny.
Yeah, and kind of summing up the episode at the end there, disappearing. Right. That was fun. Yeah, they're really smart with a lot of this stuff, and I think that they're, you know, finding good ways to address it. That's something that I'm hear a lot about online in the blogs I read, controversy about that sort of thing, about you know, all the memes that go around Facebook of, you have no excuses. Look how this person is able to do this. What's your excuse?
Right.
And how offensive that is to people with disabilities. So it was great to see them addressing that. And it made me wonder how people who don't hear about this all the time felt about it. But...
Yeah. And it's not the first time they've addressed it on the show.
Yes, they did the one where they went to the Dodger game and were getting all this special stuff. And
right. And even in the pilot, the first episode with the principal being like so accommodating that she was being ridiculous, but yet they had no ramp.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah,
she's still kind of ridiculous, but
she is ridiculous. But like you said, this show is funny whether or not the plot line is revolving around the issues that the family has that are related to special needs.
Yes.
They're a real family, and they're super believable and funny, even when, on all topics, basically.
Right. And the disability angle and the not a lot of money angle, both are kind of their slant on typical sitcom things. So,
right.
And also having the aide around is kind of fun. But they did on the most recent episode, which I think you didn't get a chance to see, they did address the subject of the different kinds of communication devices. And, why wouldn't JJ they have ones that will just talk for you with an automated voice. And so he had I guess it looked like it was his sled hockey team was, hanging out after a game. And one of the kids had one of these boards and was telling JJ he should try it. And he was saying he liked the human connection that, why am I forgetting his name?
Kenneth.
That Kenneth offers.
Gives him.
And then, so they did talk about that a little bit. And then they had a fight. So JJ was using one of those boards and using all sorts of different voices. And it was really funny. But of course, in the end, they went back to what they were doing. But I just really wish I had the sort of life where I could just every Wednesday sit down and watch this and pay 100% attention to it. But that's not likely to happen. But it's certainly, it was very enjoyable to just watch a whole bunch of them in a row. I didn't get tired of it. And I applaud everything they're doing and just how smartly they are doing it and how knowingly. And you, not being in this particular special needs bubble, are enjoying it as well.
I am, and my son likes it too. Whenever if he's around when I have it on, he'll watch and he'll laugh, and he likes it too. So
that's great. I had thought on some earlier episodes, I was sort of feeling like Ray was getting stuck with all the typical sitcom boy dilemmas, and that was kind of the weakest part. But he, in some of the later episodes, I did not feel that as much. So. He's a good actor, and they're finding different things to do with him, which I like. And I think Dylan is hilarious. I really like her.
Oh,
she
yeah.
Seems like a different sort of kid.
Yeah, she's fun.
Yeah.
Although I'm a little unclear on, the ages that these people are. And how is she in high school?
I was wondering about that, too.
Or is this school, go from 7th or 8th grade to... senior, because at one point Ray says that he's 14.
Yes.
And Dylan's younger than him, so how is she?
Yeah,
how is she running for the high school track team?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that my niece and nephew went to a school that the middle school was in the same complex as the high school, so there could have been some crossover, I guess, but. Yeah, it seems they haven't made that really clear.
Yeah. Maybe they did in the first one, and I just didn't
I thought that
pay
she
attention.
Was younger and in younger school, and then they, she came that time to be JJ's voice. But then later on in another episode, she was walking through the halls with a backpack, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me that much.
A minor detail. I have the same issues with, I'm still watching This Is Us.
Yeah.
And I really like it. But first of all, I'm trying to figure out how they all get from Pittsburgh to New York City because when they're younger, they're in Pittsburgh, but then at the end, everyone in the entire family is in New York.
Yeah.
And they constantly show the one character, like, he'll be at work in Manhattan and then he'll get a phone call and he'll have to go home, and like 5 minutes later he's in New Jersey. Like, that does not happen. There is no way that you're going to go home in the middle of the day and come back.
So, yeah, sometimes you have to let art
those
wash over you.
I know. I get hung up on that stuff sometimes. So,
but I'm still enjoying Maya. I think they're finding different ways to make her broaden her out instead of just being sort of the haranguing special needs mom that she was in the first episode, which I enjoyed too, because I have often been a haranguing special needs mom.
Right.
It's my people.
You just don't have a British accent.
I don't. But I love it. In one of the episodes, she said, "I'm ridiculous with a purpose. It is my brand." And yeah, I recognize that. And there was one, I think when they were all sick and they had to make a moon.
Yes.
And she picks up this big red therapy ball to use to make the moon. I have that therapy ball in my basement. I'm like, I have that ball! I know that ball. That would make an excellent moon.
A very large moon.
It is very large. And I have used it for all sorts of different things. So
there you go. Perfect.
Anyway, so yay Speechless. We shall try to keep keeping up with it a little better than we have. I mean, I watched like 8 episodes today, I think. But they were delightful.
Yeah. As is 17 People.
Yes, well, in an entirely different vein. Yes. So this is the season 2 West Wing episode, 17 People. It is the one where this is the start of a 5-episode run dealing with President Bartlett having lied about having MS. Or he says nobody lied. I guess it's failed to disclose that he had a degenerative illness. And that's been, up till now, we've known about it since, I don't know, since the first season. I think it's something that we've known about.
The first State of the Union, right? When he faints.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, Leo has found out about it. Abby knows about it. It was mentioned to the anesthesiologist, but the staff has no idea. Toby is the first person to figure it out, based on Hoynes being kind of a serpent. he kind of planted the seed of doubt, and I love that opening sequence where Toby is just sitting in his office. He's throwing the ball against the wall, and he's thinking about it. He's working, and he's thinking about it. He goes and asks Leo a question. He comes back. He thinks about it some more. He goes, asks Leo another question, and then finally, after like 6 days of this, he says, why is the president not going to run? And then based on that, he has to be brought in and talk to Bartlett. And then the rest of the episode is just this very tense confrontation, which is juxtaposed against the rest of the staff trying to find the funny for the correspondence dinner speech and constantly saying, when Toby gets here, he'll nail it. Singing out to Toby just having his guts scooped out by this horrible conversation with the president. So I had forgotten. I mean, I remembered the whole Toby, Leo, Bartlett part of this episode. I had forgotten that it coexisted with that and with Ainsley in the ERA and with, most wonderfully, Donna and the I wouldn't stop for red light speech. I'd forgotten that. I thought that was much later in the series, and I was kind of delighted that it came up now. So it just was an episode full of neat stuff and all, kind of going on at the same time in a really neat juxtaposition of stuff. Right.
And in the podcast, they talked about how it was what they call a bottle episode, where it was very contained and, didn't require a lot of extra actors or
I had not thought of
that. Although I guess I didn't really realize that that's what a bottle episode is. I thought a bottle episode was one that doesn't advance the plot, like one where it's just you could take it out, it's separate, and it's just its own little thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can be, but my understanding has always been that it has a limited number of characters and a limited number of scenes. Settings. So it might be people stuck in a room for the entire episode.
Right.
This, is a little, ranges about the building a little bit. It's not like it's just, if it had been, the whole episode had been in the Oval Office with the three of them, which it easily could have been, then that would have been, I think, even more bodily. But I guess I can see from the point of view of money, wanting to keep it limited.
Right.
They had to spring for Emily Proctor. They couldn't think of a plot that didn't need Ainsley.
And Ed and Larry.
Yeah. Oh, but
that's another great line. Like, I got one, but it involves a John Wayne impersonation and a sock puppet.
Yeah, not so much.
Right.
They were talking in, was it the podcast that they were talking about the word snark?
Yes.
And I was wondering whether they would say something about television without pity, because that's the first place I heard snark. What was it? Spare the snark, spoil the networks was their motto.
Yes, that's right. It
and
was.
Somewhere near here came, actually it's probably next season now, the great event where Sorkin was on the television without pity boards and got sort of eviscerated, and then wrote an episode in which Josh has the same experience and says lots of nasty things about.
Right.
So I thought maybe they would mention that. It'll be interesting when that episode comes up. They really should reach out to some of the
television without pity people.
Yes, they should. I bet they would come on and have a little talk
that
about
would be fascinating. Yeah.
That was interesting, but that'll be the Lemon Lyman episode, but I don't remember when that is. But anyway, so I think this episode is fantastic. The next 5 episodes coming up are all good. This one is particularly good, and the last one, Two Cathedrals, is particularly good. But the ones in between are strong too. But this is what it's gonna be about now through the end of the season, is how do they spin this, and how is the staff gonna take it, and how are they gonna be implicated, and what will the legal repercussions be?
Sure,
it's good stuff. But, Toby being the first one who's the president have always had somewhat of a testy relationship. And, that he's pointing out all these things that Bartlett just doesn't want to think about. And, does not take gracefully.
No. Until the very end.
Yes. And Leo's kind of in the middle, I think, has been not thinking it through just because he didn't want to.
Yeah,
right. He's loyal to his friend, but...
Well, and he wanted to win the election.
Yes, exactly.
So on the podcast, they mentioned the website called 17people.com, which a graphic designer together as a little fun project. And it's fascinating it's like a giant infographic about this episode. And
it is very cool.
Really well done. So I was glad that the podcast mentioned that, because I had no idea it existed.
Yeah, me neither. That was very fun. I'm glad they mentioned that too.
So we recommend it.
Worth going to look at. We recommend it, yes. And it's, with the Josh and Donna scene, the reason I thought it had happened so much further in the series is because after that scene, it's pretty clear.
Right.
Donna kind of puts her cards on the table there. And yet, nothing really happens.
Because Josh is just stupid, or he's like being deliberately obtuse, or what? I don't know. We'll find out.
But I love all the snarking about the flowers through almost the whole episode, and then you get this very sweet thing at the end,
right?
From her, and then I love those 2 lines. If you were in the hospital, I wouldn't stop for a beer, and she says, I wouldn't stop for red lights. That's such a nice, as they said on the podcast, such a nice bit of writing, and nicely done.
Yes.
So, and yet,
Josh does not.
They keep going on. So, and it had never occurred to me, they were talking about whether the people who interpret Sam having spilled coffee on the way back up as he and Ainsley having done something.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that it was anything other than she made him carry all the coffee because she was ticked with him.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me
offer
either.
The girl pastry and then not deliver is what I'm saying. But
especially not Ainsley. That girl loves her food.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a cute element that they keep bringing up of her personality, that pretty much you can get her to do anything if you offer her food.
Right.
Like, no, I'm too busy to come do a speech. We have Chinese food. Okay. I like Chinese food too. So anyway, so that was a very enjoyable, I really enjoyed watching that episode again, even though I would not say it was a fun episode, but it was great acting and great writing and just very powerfully done and nicely leavened by the humor side of it, as is so often the way.
Right.
But so the next episode we will be watching is
Bad Moon Rising.
Bad Moon Rising, which also has a very fun opening segment. I watched it again just to make sure it was as wonderful as I remembered, and it is. So enjoy that with Oliver Platt as the current, what would it be, I guess?
The White House Counsel.
White House Counsel.
The lawyer.
Yes, the current White House Counsel. Yes, very funny scene with him. Leading into many tense scenes with him.
Right.
That one is funny. Anyway, well, moving on from West Wing to our challenge round. For this week, I challenged you to watch an episode of Lost, a show you have never watched at all, a show that is so full of mythology that even people who watched it steadily could oftentimes not figure out what the heck was going on. So the episode that we watched was The Constant, which is, I believe, the 5th episode of season 4. And it is as self-contained as I think any episode of Lost could be, in that it dumps a whole nother bunch of mythology that we haven't really heard before. And you see Desmond's consciousness jumping back and forth in time. It was a gimmick of Lost that most of the plot lines, while you had something happening on the island, you would then flash back to things that had happened in people's pasts, and then eventually later on, things that had happened in their future. But it wasn't that they were moving there. It was just, it sort of was informing what was happening. Right. So interestingly, this is kind of made it literal.
Right.
Just all of a sudden would be someplace else. And what did you think? Did you feel like you were able to follow it enough?
Yeah, I mean, at first I definitely thought it was some sort of flashback situation, or the first time it happens, he thinks it's a dream. I mean, he is sleeping when they show it happening. Yeah. So, and so I felt like I was following it. I mean, as I mentioned to you, I thought, I don't know what happened before to get us to this point, obviously. And that made me very curious about what all happened in 4 whole years or 3 years leading up to this of episodes. Yeah. But I was able to follow it, I think. And it was really well done. I mean, it got me interested. I wanted to keep going and, watch the next one to see what would happen next. I didn't because I thought, well, I don't really have time to dive into this. But yeah, the acting is great, and the concepts are explained well enough by the end that you can grasp what's going on, and that you care. I was caring about the main character, Desmond. I was, with him there, hoping that the person would answer the phone, which was what he needed to happen at the end.
So dramatic there.
Yeah.
And so sweet when she does, and loves him. But Desmond was not necessarily he wasn't one of the first characters to be I mean, these people were marooned on a deserted island, and then people have been coming out of the woodwork all the heck over the place. So Desmond was not necessarily, he's not been somebody who's been in it a lot. And also Daniel, who was the guy who was helping him in the past and in the present, also a relatively recent addition. So there's not 4 years of backstory for those guys necessarily, which made it a lot easier, I think, to just drop in on this one.
And what about the girlfriend?
I can't remember. Now, I did not remember this, but there was a episode before. Actually, this was like I guess at the end of the third season was where Charlie, who is a character who died before this, actually in that episode, was, I guess, I can't remember too much about it, but there was a boat that Penny supposedly was coming out to look for them, and it was Penny's. They thought it was Penny's boat, and then it turned out that it was not. It was these scientists coming, and they're the ones who are on the island now with the castaways. Mm-hmm. So, and his last thing was to let Desmond know it was not Penny's boat. So because Desmond in most of this episode was not his current self. Yeah. He didn't remember that, and so I didn't remember it. But there had been some mention of her before this. And the auction scene they had there where there was the Black Rock with the boat and the journal and stuff, that is a boat that has been found on the island. And the Hanso name of the person who owned it, the journal, is a name that's been mentioned a lot in the show. So that part is all part of the ongoing mythology. Right. But I think that you don't necessarily need to know that to get this. I don't know if we've seen Penny before. It's just
because she says when they talk that she's been looking for him. So I wonder.
And she said, "I talked to your friend Charlie." So there was some contact that he knew she was looking for him. He had been. I could start to explain why Desmond is there, but
no, it's not even worth it, right?
It's not an endless podcast. You know what? Go on Wikipedia,
right? And
you can read all the basic plots of the episodes before and after. And if you, I don't know if this stuff, it must still be on. If you ever want to fall down a rabbit hole, there was a guy writing about Lost fan theories, Doc Jensen. I think he was with EW, and just so much fun. All his stuff. If I can find a link to all the stuff he wrote about Lost, I'll put it up on the show notes. And that would tell you more about what happened before and after. But it was fun watching this episode again. And I had to laugh when like 2/3 of the way through it, Saeed speaks for all of us when he says, "When this is over, someone will have to tell me what's going on."
For this episode, this season, this entire series.
Exactly. Yes. That's a little bit of meta thrown into the middle of your Lost episode right there. But it was fun. Well, so watching that episode made you feel you might want to watch other Lost episodes?
Well, it kind of made me want to just pick up from there, although that might be hard too, because I don't think I could manage to do the whole entire thing from the beginning to end. But it did get me curious enough to be like, what's next?
This was nice because it was a relatively controlled number of people. I mean, you had Desmond and Saeed on the ship, and then you saw a little bit of Jack, and then the Daniel and Charlotte, who were relatively new arrivals. But you didn't get all it's a much larger cast than this. And on any given week, they could introduce a whole nother bunch of people. So you didn't have to really, you could kind of follow who people were that mattered for this episode. Whereas other episodes, if you drop in, there could be a whole lot of people from varying factions with different agendas. That would be very confusing. Right. So it might be fun if you felt like you ever wanted to watch another one, to watch the pilot.
Okay.
Which is excellent.
Yeah, okay.
But will definitely make you want to watch more. But it's one of those shows that the experience of watching it is better than what it ultimately ends up being. You have to be able to say, I'm just going to enjoy this every week as a what the heck is this experience? And it doesn't really matter how it ends up. I'm just going to enjoy the ride. Well, I'm glad I was able to introduce you to a little bit, and that you weren't too, I cannot understand what is going on here.
No, I felt pretty good, actually. So it was a good choice. So then it's my turn now to challenge you for next week.
Right.
And because
what you got?
Because next weekend is Oscar weekend. Sunday evening, the Oscars will be on, and I'm sure we'll be live tweeting, and then we'll cover that in our next podcast. So I thought we should try to watch a fairly recent Best Picture winner that I have seen and you have not.
Yeah, well, finding one that I have not seen.
not hard.
Not a difficult task.
Yeah, out of the last 4, I've seen 2. So, so the one and those 2 that I have seen are Birdman and Argo. And Birdman was so super weird, and it made me literally motion sick to watch. So I'm not interested in watching that again.
Plus, I don't think we can do Lost and Birdman
back to back. It's just too much.
You have something with the linear storytelling.
So instead, Argo, which came out or was the winner in 2013. And I liked it because it's it's like a thriller. It's a true story of, springing these hostages from, or not hostages, but American personnel who were trapped in Iran during the hostage crisis, and they had not yet been found and captured, and so they're trying to get them out. But it has a lot of humor to it. That it's fun to watch. So we're gonna watch that.
Well, it was one of those that I always meant to watch and never did. So I'm happy to have that as my challenge. It will force me to watch it.
Yes.
So that is good. And that is going to be it for our round 2 today. Please subscribe to our Parenting Roundabout podcast so you won't miss any of our episodes, including our daily speed rounds and weekly group chats. As always, you can find recaps, links, and an opportunity to comment on our website at parentingroundabout.com. And before I say goodbye, Catherine, I realize that we didn't actually go over... I guess we mentioned both of the things we're doing next week, but let's just repeat them. That we'll be watching the episode of West Wing called... Why am I forgetting it every time? Bad Moon Rising. And we will be watching the movie Argo. Goodbye, Catherine.
Bye, Terri.
Goodbye, everybody.